Okay, homework, folks. That's dark. Actually, where we shall start, well, basically, so yesterday you watched a video on finding missing angles. Finding missing angles, once you figure out how to do it, it's actually faster than finding missing sides. It's pretty quick. So that's kind of nice. But one of the main things you need to know about finding missing angles is when you're finding missing angles, that's when you use inverse functions, the ones with the little -1. That's the only time you use the inverse functions, is if you are trying to find missing angles. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let me pull up what we need. Okay, before we get into this, because I just don't want to forget to talk about it, I want to talk to you about, let me show it to you at the same time. No, I can't find the, too many windows. Too many windows. There we are. Okay. All right, on your stream, it says newsflash remediation opportunity. So let's talk about that real quick. Maybe we'll see it. Well, that's a map, so hang on. This is going very well. So far, so good. Okay. Let's try this. I think I might have messed everything up by doing the other setting. Okay, where's our map? Let's go back, leave the map. There we go. Okay, so on the stream for your Google Classroom, you should see this, newsflash remediation opportunities. There are remediation opportunities for both daily grades and test grades coming up over the course of the next couple of weeks. Read on. Daily grades. Okay, the first thing you need to know about daily grades is anything that's a 0 in the grade book now, okay, unless it's something that you have done recently and you just haven't told me that I needed to look at it and that's it or whatever. But anything you haven't done to this point that is a 0, don't do that. Don't do that assignment. Don't try to tell me, okay, I just did this assignment. Could you go back and look at it? Because now there's a replacement assignment instead. Okay, you still have an opportunity to make up for that 0, but it's not going to be by doing the original assignment. All right, so here's what it is going to be. If you have any 0 daily grades, here's how you can make up for them. Figure out what unit the missing grade was in. Look at your grades and you see what the next test was after that assignment. That tells you what unit it was. Okay, the next test after that assignment is whatever unit that was. Then go to Delta Math and do the unit review assignment for that unit. Okay, there are 6 of them, I think. Yeah, pretty sure there's 6 of them. If it's unit 2, there are 2 parts. You need to do both parts. Your grade on that Delta Math assignment will replace any 0s in that unit that you have for daily grades. Okay. Note that I won't be accepting any other late daily grades aside from this opportunity. That's what I was saying to begin with. I'm not going to accept late other things that we've already done now. Now, if you want to replace anything, it's going to be strictly through one of these Delta Math assignments. This is your chance to make up for those 0s. Make sure you do the Delta Math assignment, not the original, if it's even accessible at this point. The Delta Math assignments must be completed before Sunday, November 29th at 11:59 p.m. That's the day before we come back from Thanksgiving break. So they need to be done before we come back for Thanksgiving break. They will close forever at that time. Test grades. If you have any unit tests on which you made a score less than 70, you have the possibility of doing a retake for potentially as many as 4 of those. And that would be kind of hard to get done, but we could possibly do it. These tests will be available during the week after Thanksgiving. Face-to-face students will have the opportunity to take them in the computer lab during class time. People at home will be able to take them during the school day. You know, it'll be open while we're doing the school day, which is basically 7 to 3. In order to take advantage of this opportunity, you must prepare for the retake by completing the Delta Math review for the same unit of the test you wish to retake. So let's say you bombed our 3rd test, which was, I think, triangle congruence. Is that what that one was? Yeah, let's say you bombed that one, okay? Then you need to go to Delta Math and do the triangle congruence, unit 3 or whatever it is, assignment, even if you didn't have 0s in that part. So you need to do it if you had 0s there, or you need to do it if you want to retake that test. Either way, you need to do that Delta Math assignment. Okay. Note that the Delta Math assignments are still closing at the same time, which is the night before we come back to school after Thanksgiving. Okay, so if you want to take a retest, you need to prepare for that retest over Thanksgiving. So get the review done before that time. Start looking now at what tests you need to prepare to retake. Now, if you are in a good position, if you don't need to retake any tests, which you can't do it if you've made over a 70 on everything. It's only for tests you made below a 70. And by the way, I don't know if I said this. The highest you can make, I don't think I said it, but we need to say it. The highest you can make is a 70. Okay. So you could theoretically bring a 22 up to a 70, which is going to help your average a lot. It could still keep you from failing. But the highest you can make is a 70 on a retake. So if you didn't make below a 70, there's no reason to take the retake. Okay. So you're not going to be allowed to. So if you passed all your tests and you also have no 0s, so you don't have one of those 2 reasons to do the Delta Math assignments, then there's a 3rd opportunity for you. You can do all the Delta Math assignments, all like 6 of them, or I don't know if it's 6 or 7. All of them will help you review for the final. You could do all of them. I've already got a few people who have done all of them. And that will add 10 points to your lowest test grade. So if your lowest test grade is like an 83, it would become a 93. Okay? Questions on any of those things?
Are we going to have, we're going to have a live final exam for the?
Yes. It will replace the test grade. It's still planning to replace the test grade. Yeah, that's still the plan.
Mr. Becca,
Like midterm. Yes, sir.
I have a question. So if we do the Delta Math for like the unit, for like the test unit, it will replace our lowest test grade?
No, the Delta Math will replace any 0s you have in that unit. Just by doing the Delta Math, it will replace any 0s you have in that unit for daily grades. Okay. If you do the Delta Math for that unit, you also, assuming you made less than a 70 on the test for that unit, will have the opportunity of doing a retake during the week after Thanksgiving for that unit. So the delta math serve two purposes. One is to replace zeros if you have them on daily grades. The other is to prepare you for a retake if you made less than a 70 on the test.
Okay.
Okay? Any other questions there before we go on and get ready for today's quiz? Yeah, if I can find, there we go. What about quiz grades? We've already all semester long been replacing lowest quiz grades with tests, so nothing else is going to happen to quiz grades. Because we've already had a replacement opportunity for those all along. So nothing new about them. Okay. Map keeps popping up. So let's go back first. I'm going to have to find that window. What I want you to look at is in the packet. As part of the video you did yesterday, you did some problems on page 7. In the packet, I want you to go ahead and turn to page 8.
Miss Rebecca,
Yes, sir.
after class, can I ask you a question?
Sure. I'm having trouble finding my dot cam. I guess I closed it accidentally. Okay, so this is what that page looks like. All right, so basically what we're doing here is sorry, you can't see it. Goes right along. Wait a minute, nobody can see it. Hang on, there we go. Goes right along with the video. Same types of problems. We're going to practice finding angles real quick, and then we're going to just review all of the rest of it real quick. So let me just make sure I got the right screen up for you guys at home. Okay, so one of the things you learned in the video is if you need to get the tan or sine or cosine, if you need to pull that apart from the angle, if you're trying to actually find the angle, then there's only one way you can do that, and that's by an inverse function. That's the thing with a little -1. And how that actually works, and I'm showing the work, but this is not actually what you have to do each time. You don't have to show all this each time. How that works is you're basically taking the inverse tan of both sides. So it's like you have inverse tan of A equals inverse tan of 2.0503. And the reason you're doing that, inverse tan would just basically be the opposite of doing the tan. It's like the undoing of the tan. Just like when we're trying to get multiplication off both sides of an equation, we divide because multiplication and division are inverses. If we're trying to get rid of addition on an equation, we subtract because addition and subtraction are inverses. So this is basically just the reverse of tan. Those cancel because it's the reverse of tan, leaving me with just A on the left. And so A is the inverse tan of this. So again, big picture, what you're doing here is it's like we're saying the tangent of some angle gives me this answer. What angle was it that gave me a tangent answer of 2.0503? That's what inverse does, is it works backwards. It says, I'm going to type in the answer for the tangent, and you tell me what angle gave me that answer. So I'm going to do inverse tan 2.0503, and it turns out it was a 64-degree angle. Okay, so A is about 64 degrees. So what that means, again, what we just found out was that tangent of 64 degrees is about 2.0503. That's what we were finding, is tangent of what equals this? Here's the answer. Okay, so if you're given an answer for the sine, an answer for the cosine, an answer for the tangent, and you don't know the angle and you're asked to please find the angle, find each angle, that's what you're doing, is using inverses. So let's go ahead and try this one. Now, this is me showing you why it works the way it works. All you really have to do is this. You just say, oh, I can move that cosine or sine or tangent to the other side by doing inverse. So here, cosine of z equals 0.1219. That means that z is the inverse cosine of 0.1219. That's what goes in my calculator. Again, this is only for finding missing angles. If I'm not finding a missing angle, I don't do that inverse, which means I don't press that second button. That's the only time I press the second is when I need to go above cosine and do the inverse cosine, or above sine or tangent. So this gives me about 83 degrees. Okay, go ahead and try number 3 if you haven't yet. Olivia, what angle did you get for number 3? Okay, what about Carden? Okay, there we go, 33. That's exactly what I got. Good. So here you get y is inverse tan of 0.6494. That's what goes in your calculator. And that's what you get, is about 33 degrees. Good. All right, we got 3 more to do in this part. So go ahead and get those next 3 done, please. Go ahead and do 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll go ahead and look at finding missing angles in a triangle. Okay, so basically we've just got some keystrokes to do here. If the sine of u is 0.8746, that means the inverse sine of 0.8746 should give me u, which is about 61 degrees. Okay. On number 5, Owen, what'd you get for V?
47.
About 47 degrees. Let me double check. I haven't done it yet. Looks good to me. How about Natalie for number 6? 16 degrees is perfect. Okay. So now let's go ahead and use these. Well, actually, first, any questions? Anybody at home or here have a question on any of those? So let's go ahead and use these in context. So here I'm finding a missing angle. I'm running remarkably low on paper, so you might have to get creative here. I like to draw it a little bit bigger. Everything about the beginning of the problem with these works the same way as with side lengths. You have to figure out what's opposite, what's adjacent, what's hypotenuse. You have to use that knowledge to figure out if I want to use sine or cosine or tangent. Then I have to write an equation. So all of that's the same as if I was finding a side length, just like what we did yesterday. After that, though, it's the solving the equation that gets pretty fast because you're just doing inverse. Okay? So here's 55. Here's 51. This is the equation. I mean, this is the angle I want to use. I'm going to call it theta, just for kicks. So 51, let me ask Eden. Is 51 adjacent, opposite, or hypotenuse? And while Eden's thinking about that, I'm going to ask Jaden, is 55 adjacent, hypotenuse, or opposite? So Eden, tell me about the 51, and Jaden, tell me about the 55. All right, we're going to pass the 51 off to Ashley Castillo. Ashley, the 51, is that? Go ahead.
Opposite.
Yes, it is. You got it. And then how about Louisa? Is 55 opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse?
Adjacent.
Close. It's definitely not opposite. It's the hypotenuse because it's across from the right angle. It is next to the angle, but there are two sides next to the angle. One of them is the hypotenuse and one of them is the adjacent. So the adjacent would actually be down here. So this one's hypotenuse. Yes, sir.
How's 51 opposite?
Well, remember that what we do is we look at the two sides of our angle. Here's the two sides of my angle. One of them is adjacent and one of them is hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is across from the right angle. So that's why this is the hypotenuse. So that was why this one's the adjacent. That means opposite. Another way to think of opposite means across from the angle, across on the opposite side of the triangle. So this is opposite on the opposite side of the triangle is 51. Okay, so then we set up our equation using those same definitions. So I'm going to use sine because it's opposite and hypotenuse. So sine of my missing angle equals opposite over hypotenuse. This is where I have to recognize I'm trying to find the angle, so I'm going to do inverse. So in other words, my angle is just going to be equal to the inverse sine of 51 over 55. And you could, if you wanted to, change that to a decimal now, or you could just type it in that way. You could do inverse sine, and you can use the fraction button if you want. Or you could do inverse sine and just do it as division, 51 divided by 55. Get the same thing either way. So about 68 degrees. So theta is about 68 degrees. Questions there?
Mr. Becker, why
Yes.
do we have to do sin for -1?
I did the inverse sine because I'm finding the angle. Whenever you're finding the angle, that's what we were talking about up here. That's what we're doing in this, like the video you watched yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what, anytime you find the angle, you have to do inverse sine.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, number 8. Looking at number 8, I'm going to ask Carson, which side is 19? Opposite, adjacent, or hypotenuse? It is opposite. How about Nick Wynn? Which side is 27? All right, how about Hannah Moore? Which side is the 27? You got it. So this one is also going to be sine because opposite and hypotenuse is sine. So I'll say sine of, let's call it x, equals opposite over hypotenuse. And since the thing I'm trying to find is the missing angle, I can get the sine away from the x. You can think of it that way too, is like you're moving the sine away from it and it becomes inverse sine when it moves. So if you have to move the sine away from the angle, or the cosine or the tangent away from the angle, that movement across the equal sign makes it inverse. So inverse sine of 19 divided by 27. That gives me 44.7, so I'm going to call that 45 degrees. Questions on that one? Remember, you only use the inverse with the -1. You only use that if you're finding a missing angle. All right, let's look at number 11. The first thing I want you to do is figure out which trig function, sine, cosine, or tangent, we're going to use in number 11. Camila, what do you think? Sine, cosine, or tangent here? How about Michaela?
Tangent.
You're right. Tangent it is. This is the opposite side. This is the adjacent side. So remember, this is the same way I set up the equation if I was just finding a leg, which means I would not do inverse. But I'm finding an angle. But let's go ahead and just set up the equation. Tan of my angle equals opposite over adjacent. And to get the angle by itself, I have to get that tan away from it, which means it becomes inverse tan on the other side. And that's what goes in my calculator. So there's fewer steps when you're finding an angle, really. Because you don't have to say is x alone and then maybe divide both sides by something. So this is what goes in my calculator. If we can see it, there we go. And I get 37.34, so about 37 degrees. Questions there? Okay, I'm going to give you a few minutes to finish these 3. Okay, so go ahead, and if you are struggling with this, the goal then is just to get a good equation set up. See if you can set up the equation correctly. Okay, let's look at just setting up the equations. For 12, this is opposite, this is adjacent, so I'm going to use tan. So I would say tan of x equals 8 over 20. That's my initial equation. For 13, this is opposite, this is adjacent, so again I'm going to use tan. So I'll say tan of x equals opposite over adjacent, 34 over 42. For number 14, this one is adjacent, and this one's hypotenuse. The 56 is hypotenuse, the 52 is adjacent. Hypotenuse and adjacent is cosine, so I'm going to say cosine of x equals adjacent over hypotenuse. So those are just my equations that I start the problem with. But with finding the angle, there's not a whole lot left to do after that. First of all, any questions about the equation setup? Okay, so then we basically are just doing inverse. In other words, to get the tan away from the x here, I just do inverse tan of both sides. So that means x is inverse tan of 8/20. So inverse tan of 8/20, inverse tan 8 over 20, whoa, divided by 20. And I get about 22 degrees. Let me point out, if this angle right here is 22 degrees, what do I need to do to find this angle up here? Yeah, I just have to subtract from 90, because the two acute angles, this is the right angle, the two angles that are less than 90, they have to add up to 90, because altogether it has to be 180, right? So you really only have to do this ever once in a triangle, even if you're trying to find all the missing information, because once you find one of the missing angles, you can subtract from 90 to get the other missing angle. So this angle up here would be 90 minus 22, which is 68. Okay, so 13, number 13, let me ask. Jennifer, what'd you get for number 13? And hang on, hold that thought while I get my answer, so I know if you're right or not. Don't leave you hanging. Go ahead. I got 39 also. I'm going to do inverse tan of 34 over 42, and I get 39 degrees. Good job. All right. How about Samira, what'd you get for 14? 22 degrees is exactly right. It's like 21.7. And if we're going to the nearest whole degree, that's 22. Questions on any of those? Okay, so now you know how to find missing angles. You already knew how to find missing sides. That means if you are asked to, you could find all the missing information in a right triangle. Now, there's a word for that. It's called solving the right triangle. If you are asked to solve a triangle or a right triangle, that basically just means find all three angles and all three sides. You always have to start with some information. Okay? Notice that what they gave me in the original problem, they gave me three things. That's always the case. Here they gave me two sides, the 56 and the 52, and they gave me one angle was the 90. So you will be given three things. If you're asked to solve a right triangle, you'll be given three things. And then that means you use those three things to find the other missing sides or the other missing angles. Okay, so let's go just now at this point, we're just reviewing to make sure we know remember all the stuff for the quiz. So let me move this over here. All right. Number one here, look at the quiz review. Find the value of each trigonometric ratio. Remember that if it's like this, where we're already given all the sides of the triangle, we're just setting up a what? A ratio. That's all we're doing here, is setting up a ratio. So for number one, you just have to figure out whether you're going to put the opposite on top of the adjacent or the hypotenuse on top of it, whatever. You're just setting up a ratio according to the definitions of these trig functions. So go ahead and try 1A, B, and C. That was A. I need to be able to see this, so hang on and make glitch on you guys. Yeah. It's going to come right back. There we go. You volunteering or asking a question? Yeah. Okay, so here's what you should have gotten for your answers. Let me go back to here's my answers. But I want to point out to you that on multiple choice things, they might simplify that fraction or they might change it to a decimal. So if you get this, you need to recognize that that's the same if you have 8 goes into both of those. So that would be 4/5. Or they might give it to you as a decimal choice. That would be 0.8. A decimal for these does not mean hit sign button and then type something in. It just means change your fraction to a decimal. That's all you're doing there. Questions on those? Okay. We spent all of yesterday on problems like number 2 there, finding the missing side lengths. So I'm going to come back to those. And we just spent a bunch of time on finding the angles. I want to talk about this real quick. Classify each angle as an angle of elevation or an angle of depression. Angles of elevation and depression, it kind of doesn't work the way you would think it does. We tend to think of depression as down and elevation as up. Okay, but here's the thing. An angle of elevation is actually saying this. It's saying that you always use a horizontal line partially like as your reference. It's like you have a horizontal line and then I am looking up from there. So the angle between my arms is an angle of elevation. So an angle of elevation is actually at the bottom of your triangle looking up. An angle of depression means horizontal line. I am looking down from here. So it's at the top of a triangle, usually looking down. So for instance, number 6 there is an angle of depression. Okay, so let me give you another view of that. Guys flying a kite, the angle of elevation would be right here. The angle of depression is not actually in that triangle. It's up here. It's always with one side is horizontal. So this is the angle of depression. The cool thing about those two, sorry, I'm not spelling it very well. The cool thing about those two is they're alternate interior angles, so they would be the same. Okay. So for instance, because the dotted lines are horizontal, they're all parallel. That's what those little arrows mean. So 6 and 7 are congruent because they're alternate interior angles, and 8 and 9 are congruent because they're alternate interior angles. So we already said that 6 would be an angle of depression because the person standing near this vertex would be looking down. So 7 would be an angle of what? Elevation, because he's looking up to go along angle 7. If this person here is looking angle 8 is his angle of depression because he would be looking down at the bottom of the statue. And number 9 is an angle of elevation because the idea is that the vertex over here, so this would be the bottom, be a little ant at the bottom of the statue looking up at this guy's eyes. So 6 is angle of depression, 9 is an angle of elevation. So we're going to use that to do the problem here on number 6. It says a plane is flying at an altitude of 14,500 feet. Okay. Yes, sir.
Your screen still shows number 1 and number 2.
What's your question?
Your screen still shows number 1 and number 2.
Okay, thank you. So a plane is flying at an altitude. Why is this not scrolling then? That's weird. Let me see if I can get it to scroll correctly. There we go. That should do it. Okay, a plane is flying at an altitude of 14,500 feet. That's how high the plane is. The angle of depression from the plane to a control tower is 15 degrees. Okay, so here's what we have. Then it says, what is the horizontal distance from the plane to the control tower? So that means how far is this? That's the horizontal distance. Here's the control tower. If this is 15, that's the angle of depression, then the angle down here would be 15 also from the people looking from the control tower up to the plane. There's my plane. Okay, so this is my triangle I'm trying to deal with. I don't really have to worry about that once I realize that that means this is 15. So this is 15. Here is the hypotenuse. Here is the adjacent. This is the opposite. So which trig function do I need to use? Tangent. I'm working with opposite and adjacent. So I would say tan of 15 equals opposite over adjacent. And then I'm going to cross multiply, and that gives me x times tan of 15 equals 14,500. Is x alone yet? So I got to keep going and divide both sides by tan of 15. And that's what goes in my calculator. 14,500 divided by tan of 15. And I get 54,114 or 115. 54,115 if it's feet. I think it's feet. Yeah. They said to the nearest foot, so that's why I rounded it to a whole number. Okay, the next one here, just to show you another one like this, says a woman is standing 12 feet from a sculpture. Sculpture's taller than her. Okay. The angle of elevation from her eye to the top of the sculpture is 30 degrees. Okay, so this is 30 degrees. The angle of depression to its base. Oh no, we have to go down too. We have to do these both. So this is kind of a complicated problem. This is basically saying something like this. Maybe she's on a little hill, maybe she's on a platform. She has 30 degrees up to the top. She has 22 degrees down to the base. She's 12 feet away from the structure, so this is 12 feet. So this basically gives me two different triangles to solve. I would have to solve this part, and I would use tan to do that. Tan of 30 equals A over 12. And then I would have to solve to find this part and say tan of 22 equals B over 12. And then I would add A plus B to find out how big the sculpture is. So this one's pretty easy to solve because when I cross multiply, will A be alone? Yeah. So this just gives me A is about 6.93. And when I cross multiply down here, B will be alone. So this gives me B is about 4.85. So I add those two together, and that will give me the height of the total structure. Question?
You're not. Wait, how do you not understand again? I'm confused.
How do what?
We're able to see the problem, but we can't see what you write down.
You can't see what I'm writing down.
No, ma'am.
I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can figure that out. I don't know what's happening here.
Can you go over number 6 and number 7? I was confusing.
Hang on a second. Okay. This is the one where can you see it now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. This is the one where she's looking at the top of the structure. She's 12 feet away from it, looking at the top of it with an angle of elevation of 30 degrees. And so I did this triangle up here to find that this part right here is 6.93. And then looking down at the bottom, guys, don't forget to do your quiz. It closes at 11:59. Don't forget to do your quiz. Yes. Okay, this is the opposite. This is the adjacent. So B, I found down here. And that way, for the total height of the sculpture, I can add those two together. Okay.
I sort of understand.
Let's see what, this is number 6. This is the one from number 6.
Oh, that's no.
Plane is flying at an altitude of 14,500. The angle of depression is 15 degrees, which means this angle down here would also be.
Yes, it's still the same. Oh, it's still the same as question number 7. Mr. Brecker? Are we supposed to wait for her to get back, or? I don't even think it's time for her to leave. Yeah, I don't think it is.
Hey, T.
Your screen froze.
Yeah, I lost the network. Okay, so did you see the picture with did you see hang on, I gotta share.
No,
Did
ma'am.
you see the one with the plane?
No, ma'am. Your screen froze.
Okay. Okay, here's the one with the plane. It tells me that he's got a height or an altitude of 14,500. And then the angle of depression is 15 degrees, which means over here, which means
You're
that
not.
down here would also be 15 degrees. What was that?
Oh, wait, never mind. I think your thing. I think it's delayed.
Oh, okay. Well, hopefully the recording is getting the picture so that when I post the recording, you'll be able to see the picture and see this problem.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay?
And I had a question about. I had
Here,
three
hang on
other
one
questions.
second. Hang on one second, please. Hang on one second. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording for this session so that you and I can talk separately. Okay.